Going on, my friends? I'm Rick, and this is your seat at the table, and welcome to the wintry wonderland that is the Midwest. We are having a bit of a blizzard today and tomorrow. Only got about 3 inches of snow, but it's snowing pretty hard out there. This will be Thursday, a couple days before Christmas, and with this kind of weather, basically I shut my truck down for the week. I'm told my boss I'm not risking the truck anyway. So one of the things that's always interested me and or troubled me in a lot of ways is when FASA bellied up, whatever the reasons, and I'm sure they're business wise they had issues, and there were some other things. Anyway, they sold the franchise for Battletech and Shadowrun and a bunch of other stuff, and it was picked up by Wizkids in tandem with Fanpro. And it's at this era things start to get really muddled. It gets real muddy when it comes to franchise rights and who controls the creative rights for this portion of Battletech and that portion of Battletech. So we know that this gets bought up by a bigger company, and then yet another bigger company comes along, and then another one buys up the digital rights from the video rights. So we have a set of franchise rights for the video games, and another one for the physical books and the novels, and yet a third one for online digital processing and things like the short-lived anime series and things like this. And this is one of those reasons why here we are decades later, and there's a lot of people in the fan base that say, hey, we would absolutely love to have a live-action version of Battletech come to the small screen or to the theaters. It's not likely to happen, and for a number of reasons, starting with the literal rights to everything is such a hot mess. It's hard to settle and to get everything on board that needs to be on board. The second thing, of course, is as beloved as the hobby is, and to us and the diehard fan base, and you new folks that are coming in that are new to Battletech and stuff, it just isn't a numbers game for us. I mean, sure, straight up. The only reason the Dungeons and Dragons was able to get a couple, and if you look at them, from the animated series from the 80s to the recent movie that came out or is supposed to come out. I haven't seen it. I haven't seen it myself, and I haven't seen it advertised for the theaters recently, so I don't know how that played out. But it had a much wider fan base, and in part because of the TV series like Stranger Things that brought it to the forefront in the average mind of people who don't play the games. They're only in it for the video, the movie, and things like this. So the opportunities for the corporations behind manufacturing all these entertainment venues is deeper pockets and more chances of making money on it. You're not going to ever see that with the Battletech franchise, because there just isn't tens of millions or hundreds of millions of people that are interested in supporting something like that. So if they were to do it, it would be low budget, and low budget isn't necessarily a good budget. Meanwhile, personally, I'm of the opinion that I don't think too many people have thought well through that, because it would take some people who really understand the nuances of Battletech to pull off of live action anything. And even the animated series was really kind of marginalized, right? And it went off into tangents and stuff that were not really conducive to the storyline of the video or of the mainline Battletech. As a matter of fact, there's a couple interviews that are done. If you ever go, just go to Renegade HPG, and he has a number of podcasts where he's interviewed people from the various franchise owners and various production staffs of FASA and Fanpro. And it's well worth your time. Some of the authors, your famous, the most famous, Michael Stackpole and Blaine Pardoe have done several videos, and Tex Talks Battletech. He's done a couple of videos and podcasts for with Renegade HPG. They're well worth your time. I viewed them a few times, and I always pick up new and interesting nuggets and details. And I tend to believe what they say because they were there. They were there, and they were in the process, and they were in the collaboration, and the hot mess that was and is the thing we love and still support today. Still. So if you're an old hat like me, and I'm 56 years old, and just take a point if you do go and watch some of the videos, just how many of those fine gentlemen sport the stash. I'm just saying, I've had my stash since I was old enough to grow one. It's only been shaved off once in my lifetime, and that was kind of against my will. And you know, I know it looks a little unbalanced because the way it's over here, but it is actually down here. It just over here blends into my face a little better, you know, the hair, the crap. Anyway, so the hot mess in these videos, they give you a lot of information. And recently I posted one. Y'all know I did a remake of an earlier video I did for Far Country. Far Country is a bit of a controversial novel, and whether it's considered fan fiction or you know, a actual in canon thing. And one of the head guys at FASA at the time that greenlighted that particular novel talks about it a little bit in that video, and I posted a link to that video on my excuse me, my video of Far Country, and it just confirms everything I've been saying for decades, that it was a foray into an experiment to see if the fan base would be receptive to aliens of any kind of intellectual capability being introduced to the Battletech scene in significant numbers. And that the fact at one point that when they were first considering the concept of the clans, that they had very, very briefly considered the clans being an alien species that was replicating or just coming in and had gotten their hands on human technology and enhanced it. So they didn't go that route because the most glaring obvious gorilla in that particular room at the time was Kerensky and the SLDF and the Exodus, which is, as we all well know, that's how this thing played out. So it's just interesting to go down that route. So when FASA bellied up, hold in with me and we'll get around this damn thing sooner or later. When FASA bellied up and Dark Age started, I really struggled. I really did. And part of the struggle was that the Dark Age novels are crap. I mean, nothing against the authors who wrote them. I've tried to write novels. I'm not lying. I have stacks and stacks of stuff, and you know, it's just one of those. I'm in a procrastination era decade at the moment. But the facts of the facts are, it's a lot of work, and you really have to do it well. You really have to put the effort in. It's not everybody can just sit down and make one pass at things and then say it's all golden, because it rarely turns out that way. And so the fact that they did what they did, they also had to work with this leap forward in time. So we have this time jump, or time shift as I like to call it, and the introduction of the Republic era. And so we suddenly have this massive gap. Well, it makes sense from a lot of ways, because when one company closes shop and there's a hot confusion as to whether or not another company is going to pick up where the original company left off and continue down that path to maintain a continuity of everything, or if a new company is going to completely just, you know, shelve everything that came in the past and call it legends and go forward with their own view of things. So there was this mix in between. And then in addition to this, and this is where I got at the time, I really didn't understand, and I didn't stick around long enough to find out and to develop an understanding. So I'm still playing Mother May I Catch Up with a lot of the older stuff. That's now, for many of you consider that, you know, in the can and long gone from 2 decades ago, and I'm now just still trying to catch up with it, which is where I come up with things like this. I'm always on the lookout for stuff, and I lucked out into a copy of the Dawn of the Jihad, which in itself is a hot mess too, because of the format that they chose to present it as. But when FASA bellied up and Wizkids acquires the franchise, they worked kind of hand in hand with another company called Fanpro. And so for a long time, I've always wondered why it's Wizkids and Fanpro. Obviously, Wizkids' mind in my mind is some kind of connection to Wizards of the Coast, which is a much grander company, etc., etc. But where the hell does this Fanpro come in? And why are they not the same people? Because for a while there, I thought they were, and I'm now convinced 100%, mostly because of things I've read and these interviews I've seen and other stuff, that these are actually two separate entities that were kind of working hand in hand. more like a subordinate to an indifferent commander. So WizKid gets the main primary rights for the tabletop version of the game, for the war game, the book material, but they really weren't looking into that. They didn't want to deal with the novels and source books and things like this. This is what I'm understanding. And so this is where Fanpro, and Fanpro originates from people who were in FASA at the time that FASA closed and sold its franchise. The owners sold his franchise rights out, and so these people transitioned over, it's a real convoluted thing. So I want to read some of that stuff, and we'll go from there. Because I think this is very pertinent and interesting, worth noting. And I'm having light issues in this room. It just seems like to me that when my down views are extremely bright and everything gets to be a kind of a bland look to me. So we're looking at what the developers say. The Word of Blake first appeared in 1992 with the publication of the Comstar Sourcebook, a direct result of events from the novel Lost Destiny by Michael Stackpole. As with many major schisms within the fictional setting, especially one revolving around a pseudo-religious order, the plan from inception was to ultimately stage an apocalyptic future battle between the sundered halves of Comstar. However, as with so many plot threads weaving through the Battletech universe, at that point in time, the unfolding events was nebulous at best. In '94, FASA held its first fiction summit concerning the Battletech universe. At each of these large-scale summits, which have occurred every 2 to 3 years for the past decades, the Battletech developers and editors, the president of the company, the game creator Jordan Weisman, and the primary authors of Battletech sourcebooks and novels met to develop the next several years' worth of plot threads, which they could then weave into novels and sourcebooks. At the '96 meeting, participants began to firm up the nebulous plan using the word Jihad for the first time to describe the coming battle. However, the major events of the Twilight of the Clans and the FedCom Civil War still needed to be developed and published, making any Jihad many years distant. As the next fiction summit in '98, the Jihad received a little more meat on its bones, although the meeting participants spent most of that time spelling out the details of the huge FedCom Civil War. The summit in late 2000 saw a serious effort to develop the Jihad event. Authors and developers finally put on paper a series of novel ideas and concepts, along with rough sketches for accompanying source books to begin what would become the Word of Blake's crusade, and then everything came crashing down. FASA closed its doors in January 2001, and it appeared Battletech might die. Fortunately, Battletech community refused to let that happen. Wizkids Incorporated purchased Battletech intellectual property and went on to publish MechWarrior Dark Age, the collectible miniature game set 65 years in Battletech's future. Meanwhile, Fanpro licensed the rights to continue publishing Battletech source books and rulebooks. Since that day, Fanpro has published a new box set and more than 20 new source books and rulebooks, while getting additional products back into print as well. However, a key element temporarily went missing. From the beginning, Battletech has been a living universe, growing and moving forward, its characters, nations, and people constantly evolving. After the FedCom Civil War plotline ended in 2001 and 2002, Battletech universe went into hibernation of sorts, stuck in 3067. This hiatus allowed us to explore numerous facets of the universe never fully developed, such as publishing construction rules for battle armor and support vehicles, generating badly needed revisions of such books as Aerotech 2 and technical readouts 3026 and 3057. Delving into some of the supposed powers behind the clans, the houses, and interstellar players, launching the historical and handbook series, and so on. The lack of forward progress on this timeline made itself felt. The hiatus took place for numerous reasons. It allowed Fanpro to firmly establish its ability to produce quality products, including the creation of fact-checking groups fans help maintain continuity and quality, and enable WizKids to firmly cement its own timeline and game before starting to close the gap. The decision to pause Battletech Universe was not made lightly. In 2003, I proposed that by 2005, all other criteria should be met and we could finally delve into the Jihad. We soon realized that the framework for how the Jihad would take place and develop had changed almost beyond recognition since 2000. Instead of presenting to the community a largely unexpected event beyond foreshadowing laid down across the past decade, as FASA had done with the Fourth Succession War and the Clan invasion, the history of MechWarrior Dark Age timeline spelled out in some detail the events of the Jihad, including its ending. We also did not have the primary venue for conveying such a mammoth storyline. No novels about it had been written. Wizkids did launch a new and successful line of MechWarrior Dark Age novels, continuing to flesh out a new and exciting universe and its characters. But these books don't provide the support needed for the classic Battletech fiction. So when we convened another summit at the end of 2002, we quickly realized we had to think outside the box across the board. The standard, all-inclusive, mostly straightforward style of sourcebook publishing for Battletech over the past 20 years simply would not cut it. Instead, the writers need to generate a completely new style that would put the players directly into the events of the Jihad, unfolding them as time and sourcebooks progressed. We also had to deal with the continuity as never before. Not only to tie in and develop the past 10 years and more of plot threads across dozens of FASA/Fanpro published products and novels, but also to work the numerous threads leading back from MechWarrior Dark Age. We needed to develop these plot threads through the Jihad to create the next era for classic Battletech stories and the source books of the Jihad's aftermath, and also lay out the foundation for events planned for the future of MechWarrior Dark Age, i.e. games and novels. All this while attempting to provide action-packed storytelling rife with suspense and surprise to shock and entertain, not to just keep the community coming back for more, but to generate new excitement for the Battletech universe. To achieve that goal, more front-end work has gone into this product than any of the roughly 50 others I've worked on. We spent half a year alone kicking ideas around and fleshing out a proposed style of presentation for all Jihad sourcebooks that will follow its outline and the accompanying timeline, a 10,000-word proposal. Because of this project would start to move into MechWarrior Dark Age territory more so than any other Battletech product published by Fanpro to date, it would require Wizkids' approval to move forward. I consider it a testament to the work of all of the various authors put forth that Wizkids approved without a single requested revision. Based on the proposal, detailed writing assignments were generated. Once written sections came in, they were handed off to fact-checking team, which combined with the playtesters and authors generated more than 2,000 emails in weeks and months of review and counter-review. Outside the fantastic work they've done in making the handbooks a quality line, they earned their keep and then some with the mammoth effort they poured into helping make this product and the Jihad as a whole all it can be. Overall, we've done more front-end and back-end work than any previous product I can think of, and for all the product, it covers only the first year of the Jihad. As you dive down the dawn of the Jihad, you notice that the short fiction piece in the front not only ends as in a cliffhanger, but that the continuing story will not be published in the future source books. Instead, it will continue at the www.battlecorps.com, the official online source for canon classic Battletech fiction. I made this decision for several reasons. First, the cliffhanger aspect of the fiction pieces fits Dawn of the Jihad as a whole. This is only the first year of the Jihad, and the whole product ends in a cliffhanger, writing of the story to continue in Jihad Hotspots 3070. Second, while Battletech sourcebooks have always been entertaining in their own right, players would have missed the full experience of any major Battletech event, from the Fourth Succession War to the Clan invasion, Twilight of the Clans, and the FedCom Civil War, and so on, without the accompanying novels. I believe Battletech has survived for more than 20 years because of those novels, and the dynamic storytelling format began in 1986 with the publication of the first Battletech novel, Disillusion at Thunder Rift. As Fanpro has grown over the past 3 years and increased the quality and size and scope of its products in preparation for fully accepting the Battletech mantle and moving the timeline forward once more, Battlecorps has grown as well. While able to explore numerous aspects of the Battletech universe, including historical fiction, I believe Battlecorps' true contribution to the Battletech property, and more importantly to the community, to be felt during the Jihad, and what has already generated a huge buzz online excitement, Shadows of Faith, and the first of many stories supporting, fleshing out, and weaving through the various future Fanpro Jihad source books appears at the front of this product. I've always contended that every license, from the million-selling computer games and novels to decals and miniatures to the heavy metal software line, all provide essential support for the Battletech universe, and Battlecorps is no different. Even though we said Battle Core, even though so many people have poured so much time and effort into the dawn of the Jihad sourcebook to make it as exciting and dynamic as possible, Battletech fans will miss the full experience of the Jihad without out the fiction Battle Core provides. So now comes the test. You hold in your hands accumulation of 9 years and thousands, if not millions, of man hours at the beginning of what I hope would be a fantastic, enjoyable ride for several years and numerous source books to come. In the end, none of this would be possible without Battletech community. Although it is my sincerest hope that as a product it will generate excitement needed to spark interest amongst a new generation of players, while bringing back those who have parted ways. This book is dedicated to those fans who have stayed the course with Battletech through thick and thin. It's because of you that Battletech still exists. Because of you, we've dedicated so much effort to making the Jihad the most enjoyable event yet in Battletech's long, illustrious history. Only you can judge whether or not we succeeded. Thank you, Randall and Bill's classic Battletech line developer. And then we have an assistant developer's addendum. There's really nothing to add to the except the heartfelt dedication of this product to the fans at large. Thank you all for your stalwart support and love of the game, even in our lean years. Starting now, I hope we can repay your patience and devotion in full. Herbert A. Bias II, classic Battletech assistant line developer. So, boy, that's a mouthful of stuff, right? And a lot of things that to talk about now. I kind of wish I'd wrote some notes down because my eclectic memory is not the greatest. All right, so I just read a bunch of crap. I know the crap, but then I got ideas in my head while I was reading it, and I'll probably forget half of those things. Right. So let's start with one of the key things that come out of this right off the bat is what's still in my head: Battlecore Online community. I understand it was a great idea and a great concept, and it probably did well for Fanpro for many years. Herein lies our problem now. Where's Battlecore at? Can you log into Battlecore? Can you access any of the stuff that's published there? Can you get access to it? My understanding is after Fanpro and Wizkids took a dump and CGL took up the franchise, Battlecore took a dump too, and they shut down. I have not had any success of getting into Battlecore. Maybe I'm not doing it right. Is it still supported? Is it a thing? What happened to all the digital information that was posted on it for and by and supported by the fan base, the players, and the creative staff that was at Fanpro? So I have an incomplete story at the beginning of this book because I have no way to know where to find the other half of it or anything that continued from it. So for those of us who are still, trying to come to grips with the past eras of Battletech, yeah, I guess you're just SOL, right? Unless you got fan-based people who maintained and kept that stuff and can get it to you in some way, because the odds are pretty good the CGL is not going to put it out. They have more than enough stuff on their plate doing what they're doing. I mean, all you got to do is listen to the interviews of the guys working for FASA and back in the day at Renegade HPG to understand just how much effort really goes in behind the scenes to running a company, period, and to produce quality product on a regular basis. A lot. And it's usually done by a handful of small people. And that depending on who's running the show at the time, how much freelance material that they accept from people like you and me and Dupree, right? So there's that stuff. And then we got to understand the disconnect and the connect. So Fanpro is trying to continue the storyline, that missing 65-year gap. So when Wizkids takes over, they immediately leap forward 65 years and establish the Age of the Republic or the Republic of the Spear and all the Dark Age, and all this stuff is progressing forward from that. So in reality, a lot of those Dark Age novels are set 65 years, 60 years in the future from the conclusion of the FedCom War. So from a player's perspective, from my perspective, from most of you old hat perspectives, the thing is, in 2002, 2001, FASA bellies up, and suddenly there's this confusion, and they're still putting out some products. Products are still rolling out because they've been in the pipeline and they were complete or damn near complete, so why wouldn't they? And so we understood that there was something wrong, that the parent company that produced Battletech was no longer there. And then there was a lot of rumors and conjecture. And keep in mind, in 2001, social media was about as productive as it is now, and the chat rooms and things like that were quite conducive. It's, this is something new for you, something for you young folks to understand, right? All this fancy stuff that you consider social media and digital age and your cell phones and all those other things and all that other fun stuff, like, I don't know, TikTok crap like that. Guess what? It existed 20 effing years ago. All it's done is become wider and more accepted and maybe refined a little bit, but not that much. Things have changed a little bit, but not that much. You still got shitloads of forums out there and places where people go. I mean, Discord is just chock-a-block full of them. I haven't personally logged into Discord, and it's probably because I'm an old hat that's, I'm an old grognard that's reluctant in some ways, because I temporarily did Discord when I was playing a video game online, and the damn thing took over my computer and it wouldn't stop. Every time I turned my computer on, it bombarded me with a bunch of crap, and I couldn't get it to stop doing it, and it annoyed the hell out of me. So I discontinued it. I don't like that sort of stuff. It's just like I changed software for my security protocol for the year for my computer because I had McAfee, but then he jacked the price way up, and I'm like, no. So I went with their competitor, and I'm not happy with the competitor at all, in part because the damn competitor keeps popping up crap all the time. I get these fucking pop-up things come all the time. Oh, you need this. This is enough. Buy this. You should buy this. It's basically them trying to screw me to put more money into their pockets. And I do their job, protect my damn shit, and leave me the hell alone. And excuse my French. Yeah, this ain't for kiddos. So if you're a kiddo or you're easily offended by my less than refined language, where you can, take off. I'm sorry. Anyway, I get annoyed and I get frustrated, and it comes out pretty quick. So when we looked at this, a Fanpro basically was a bunch of the people who worked for FASA, who were devoted to the program that had already been established and understood where FASA had planned to go. After the FedCom Civil War ended, and things were starting to cool down in the inner sphere, the Jihad was planned to happen. So it wasn't something like an afterthought. It was well planned out in advance, and they had a lot more planned for it. The problem is the lion's share of their plans, and you can have, what they say, plans only last till they meet the enemy, right? So the enemy was change and another company. So suddenly FASA becomes two separate entities. Two separate entities evolve from FASA, and we have Wizkids with their whole idea and their whole agenda based on the Dark Ages. And it was kind of mediocre. They were also introducing the minis as clicks. If you're not familiar with that, you need to Google it, because I never purchased any of them. Because first ones I saw, I'm thinking, these look like children's toys. I was not happy. They were much bigger and bulkier and clunkier than my minis. And I lived, even back then, I lived in a small place. We didn't have a lot of room. I didn't have room to have a 4x8 tables and leave it set up and not have people muck with it or cats get on it or something else or end up crap piled on it, because I just didn't. So the idea of needing an even bigger space, because my maps are going to be much bigger to deal with these new models that they were trying to introduce at the time, that was the final nail for me. I'm like, I'm out of here. I have other things to do and more important stuff. And then the world got involved too. And anyway, so that's where I got away from a lot of the gaming material, and I started working on building my own damn game system and started writing all these would-be novels. And I spent the better part of 15 years doing that. That's a fact, Jack. Anyway, so Fanpro's developer staff and the people in charge had to tiptoe around Wizkids. They needed Wizkids' permission and approval for anything they did within a certain, that would interfere with that transition stage at that 60 to 65 year mark. So when the Jihad grinds down and the era of the Republic begins, or the Dark Age begins, there's this muddied gray area, this no man's land in between these two corporations. and their development staff that had to have been really, I can't even get my head around just how complicated and or potentially how convoluted things would have to have been for them. And the fact that Fanpro did what they did for as long as they did and produced a lot of good material. You know, there are a lot of material. I've picked up a lot of Fanpro stuff, especially recently, and I'm actually not unhappy with the material they put out. I really do understand what they were trying to do, and that they did a damn good job of it. And I think that sometimes they don't get the praise the praise that they ought to when it comes to just that, because so many people, some of the older people, you know, so many people like myself, totally disillusioned by the whole mess, and then we got confused by it, and we don't have time in our life to spend all of our time. There's my wife out there yelling on the phone. She talks animated louder than me when she gets whatever. I don't know what she's on the phone about. Anyhow, so when I see this, you know, this book here, and this is obviously, this is not something I purchased. It came out some years after I had basically walked away from the table. And so I saw this online when I was looking at it's called Dragon Trove or something, and they have a number of the older Fanpro materials available. And I saw this, and I read the caption on it. And of course, I did a little bit of my due diligence. Well, sorry about that, wrong button. I did a little bit of my due diligence, and so I checked other people's reviews and things like this, and I thought, okay, this is something potentially is worth having. And just for that first 2 pages of the introduction, or the explanation from the production staff there at Fanpro, you know, this Mr. Bills, I mean, this is priceless. This is gold. Out of the whole effing book, this is probably the best piece of it, because it really sets down what was going on at that crucial stage, and just how much that they were able to achieve. Because most game companies, when they belly up, the franchises are done. I have hundreds, literally hundreds of videos on my channel. I'm pushing 900 videos right now, and over half of them are based off of game systems or games, period, that for all intents and purposes are dead. I mean, yeah, there's been some renaissance and resurgence in a couple of them that's brought some people, other people have come to the table and said, I missed that game so much, I'm going to try to reintroduce it. And they got no flack or no issue with the people who own the franchises. Or in some cases, the franchise owners are still out there that just don't have the time or money or effort or don't care enough to push anything. So you can build on those franchises without a lot of effort. The problem is there's still a dead language. There's still a dead game, because the fan base is just not big enough to support them financially. You're not going to see a lot of Kickstarters for them because there won't be anybody to support them. You have to have crazy old goobers like me who go, oh, I like that game system. I'll buy that material because it's covering something I don't have in that existing system, and I really kind of miss the game system itself. But if you've been in the games long enough, I don't care what format, video games is the same problem. You know, when I was a kid, it was Atari and Nintendo, and they were the bee's knees, or whatever you want to call it, for the era that they were. But when you look at them now, it's nostalgic and crap. I play things like that on my cheap cell phone. Not that I use my cell phone that way, because the bandwidth my phone wouldn't work. But you know what I'm saying. So I never owned an Atari or a Nintendo, any of that crap. My buddies did, and I played their games on occasion. But my choice was these things. I went into the hardback paper versions of stuff because that's what that was my video games growing up, and I just continued with it. And then, of course, it wasn't until 92 or 91 that I bought my first computer. I mean, honestly, I'd actually had word processors before that, overglorified typewriters, and I thought it was the bomb that I could save a few pages of crap on a little cheap little disk until I got behind my uncle's computer for a minute. Because in my mind, you know, these things were horrendously expensive and only for rich people. And so I bought, you know, I went out and bought one, and it was horrendously expensive. It took me 2 years to pay it off, and had nothing but problems with that first one. And then I bought a second one, and it was was twice as expensive as the first one and took me almost as long to pay it off. And then it also had just as many problems with it. You know, now in recent years, these laptops and stuff are good for a couple of years. This one I got here is probably due to be replaced. It's actually sitting in front of the previous one I got. And I think that one was actually a better one than this one, even though this one cost a little more. Right? And it won't be for another, I don't know, maybe this time next winter, if I'm lucky, I'll have the finances to go and justify dropping $400 or $500 on a new laptop. So let's all hope this thing holds out that long, you know, because push comes to shove and I have to go back to the other one. I don't know if it'll function right. I mean, I've kept it plugged in this whole time, just because I don't know why, because I'm thinking I need to. I don't want it to drain its batteries completely. Anyway, so when we look at that continuity thing is a huge challenge for anybody. And the fact that the Mr. Bills and all those other fine folks, and they had the support of those authors, you know, Stackpole and Pardo and what's his name, Lee something, and the list, there's like 6 or 7 core Battletech authors that transitioned from FASA over to the Wizkids and Fanpro era and still are here with CGL. And in large part, their hard work, and Mr. Bills is not wrong. The novels, you know, of all the game systems out there that have any serious legs, that last the age of time and multiple corporations mucking with them, are ones that have a deep and heavy novel base, because these are have as much importance as the books, the source books. Now, granted, you can usually buy a source book and get more information out of this than out of the novel, and it's not always the truth. And there are some crappy novels, and there's some that are not so good. And it's not that the authors were bad; it's that the stories that they were told to write and the support were dodgy at best. So you know, it's part of that part of that thing. So if you look at the largest, most successful game systems that still maintain and play today, you know, the biggest behemoth, the titan in the industry is Dungeons and Dragons. You know, they have had several major corporations own and control their operations and direct their, you know, who's doing what and what. But they put out a shitload of novels for several different types of game systems related. So if you didn't like playing in the Forgotten Realms, you could play in oh geez, I'm drawing a blank, and I know the damn thing's got a dozen books out in the damn other room. Jeez, right? Of course, Greyhawk. Who remembers Greyhawk? Oh, you have to be an old man to remember Greyhawk. Well, I have a few things from Greyhawk, but Forgotten's Realm dominated everything for the late 80s through the 90s. Warhammer 40K. Games Designer Workshop, you know, is a behemoth of themselves. Excuse me, a little breakfast there on my teeth. So they have novels too, and their work is quite thick, and their source books are quite thick. So what makes a source book really good is the fluff. It's the stuff in there that makes everything work together and bring more stuff, add more things to it. There's a game system that's basically defunct called Middle-earth Role-Playing Game, or MERP. Now, there's been some later revisions or introductions in an attempt to get back into it. I think the One Ring or the War of the Rings or the Ring, something like that, is another version of it. But MERP, who was put out by Iron Crown Enterprises, one of the things that made that game system so good was there wasn't a whole lot of novels. There was the novels, The Hobbit and the Lord of the Rings, and then the whole game system was basically based off of Tolkien's world, and those were Bibles for the game system and the people playing it. And importantly, every source book, every module, every adventure book, everything added another piece to the bigger picture. So whether it was a big puzzle piece like a region, or a smaller puzzle piece, a section of a region, or events going on during a certain era of the region, or just a set of adventure modules set in a little corner of something adjacent to one of the big regions, they all interlocked in like a set of Legos to make one big, huge, great tapestry. So every book counted, every book mattered, every book added an element. So in a lot of ways, we look at Battletech in that same way. There's so many eras going on. There's so many times and places that we can play in. There's some that's not so good and some that are great. And then there are, of course, the flavor. What is your particular flavor? What do you like? And the fact that you can do tabletop war games and never do another damn thing in the setting. You don't need to have all the source books and the novels. You don't like to read. I don't like to read, because I know a lot of people like that. They just don't like to read. It's actual painful to watch them. My buddy Kenneth, I love him to death. Don't be wrong. He's a really likes to play the video game stuff. Likes to play the tabletop stuff too, but reading, oh my God. It's horrible. He just struggles something fierce. And then there's comprehension. It's not enough to just be able to read and understand what but to understand what you're reading and let it flow. You know, for some people, it's much of a harder stroke than others. And if you're one of those folks, I'm not trying to lambaste you or pity you or make fun of you in any way whatsoever. I understand it. I get it. I do and I don't, right? Because I'm not in that camp. I have plenty of my own problems in my own areas where I'm not good at it, and I'm willfully ignorant of certain things, because that's why I call it willfully ignorant. There's a lot of that going on today in America, especially in politics and people supporting politics. You really think these people after you? You think that they're looking after your interests? You're dumb. You really are stupid. If you can't see, don't look at read between the lines. Listen to what they're saying and what they're not saying, and look what they do and what they don't do. That tells you what's really going on. But anyway, so we see the same thing in these kind of politics and this sort of stuff. The fact that there wasn't a whole lot of friction between Wizkids and Fanpro made it succeed, and it's successful as much as it did. And so what we've seen is this hot mess transition, and of course, Fanpro has put at a massive disadvantage because, once again, they had a huge amount of material already plotted and planned, and the basic foundation laid out for what the next era would have been for Battletech had FASA continued forward. And so they were trying to fill that gap. They wanted to fix that. They wanted to keep that continuity as solid as possible. So when Wizkids comes in and says, "No, we're just going to do our own thing, and we're going to set it this, and this," now they were able to do a lot of it and still stay within the spirit of Battletech. I see this in Star Wars, right? This is what really thing that most soured me on Disney's takeover and Kathleen Kennedy's so-called visions from what Lucas's was. I understand they're different people and they have different ideas, but when you come into a franchise and you really don't have a freaking clue about what that franchise is and what it's about and what the stories in it are and just how wide and varied they are, and you basically throw a bucket of water on it and kick it out the back door and let it freeze and die in the backyard because it's not your thing or it's not what you want, and you want to rewrite the Bible? Yeah, there's a reason why there's thousands of years of biblical conflict between numerous factions within the Christian faith alone. I grew up with fire-breathing, Bible-throwing ministers for aunts, uncles, and my grandfather. I know that stuff because I had it beat into my head all my life. And how convenient it works in one way and how it's misused in another way, and blatantly so and shamefully so. Anyway, so the fact that they got along fairly well and they allowed Wizkids allowed Fanpro's people to progress what they did. So Fanpro was saddled with this massive thorny thing. How do we bring the end of the FedCom war, and how we bring this forward through the Jihad, because we're going to have to work with what we got, because we know that Wizkids are in their mind, the Jihad is a done thing. It happened in the past. They know how it ended, and they know some key things in it, enough to set the foundation stones for their Dark Age era. They're moving forward through the Dark Age, which, no offense to Wizkids, that sucks too. That Dark Age stuff, that era of the Republic, yeah, that didn't do so hot neither. And a whole lot of people talk favorably of that era. Just saying. So what all the Wizkids did for 15 years, Fanpro got far more mileage out of it than Wizkids did. Wizkids took a whiz all over whatever it was they were trying to achieve. And mostly, for the most part, You know, they rode the backs of the success of Fanpro, and Fanpro is what carried a lot of the fan base forward. Kudos to those people at Fanpro and the work and effort that they did. So when we look at where the transition from the Fanpro / Wizkids era to the Catalyst Game Labs era, once again, I wasn't present for it, and I do not know how easy or how smooth that transition was. I don't know what brought Wizkids to an end or Fanpro to an end. At some point it ended, and then they passed the buck. Somebody sold the damn franchise rights yet again to another group of people who then decided this is what we're going to do, and now we're familiar. So I mean, I've got Tamar Rising and Forward. Things prior to that, I'm still playing catch up on. Ilkan is quote era that we're still in. I'm hearing stories. We're back to that. You know, what was the plan? So obviously, FASA's plan was halfway carried out by Fanpro as best as they could with the conditions and the constraints put upon them by Wizkids, who then produced an era for Battletech, which is lackluster at best. I mean, it really doesn't, to me, Fanpro's material is the game, and I don't know what Wizkids really produced. It's in elements and sections of the game I never played. Video games and stuff like that, I guess, maybe. And if y'all know more of that, you need to talk. You need to do some own videos or make some commentary. Help me understand what the hell's going on there, because I'm not sure, and I probably, won't. And like I said, it wasn't until I was able to read this stuff here from Bill's, Mr. Bill's own words as to just what was going on in their mind at the time. And then even then, as much hard work as they put through, like I said, Battlecore, great concept, great idea, grossly flawed because it wasn't going to last forever. This is where Sarnawiki comes into play and does a great job because, once again, how long will Sarnawiki go? Well, Sarnawiki is not owned by anybody who owns these franchises, which lets you know something I don't know, because maybe there must be some ties, because obviously CGL and Catalyst and their parent corporations haven't took a big dump all over Sarna, haven't shut them down, haven't forced them to shut down. I don't know that Sarna's making any money. I don't know if that's their goal. I mean, that's how they get away with a lot of it. It's the same thing with their monetization. I'm doing videos on YouTube. I said, I'm never going to get to 10,000 plus for subscribers. I don't ever see that happening for my channel. So I'm not going to financially make anything off this channel. I mean, I need what? You need over 1,000 people just to be monetized in the first damn thing. There's boom, you get 4,000 freaking video hours and then they'll change it again. YouTube's well, there's a corporation. They're in it to make money. I get it. I'm grateful for the format that they give us. I'm just saying. But at the end of the day, they're not in it for most of us. And even the bigger websites, they get hit hard. I mean, there's a guy that does a bunch of stuff for Star Wars, and he makes his money off of his, that's his family's livelihood, and he's having a horrible time right now with some third-party company comes into the music, and he has printed proof and verbal proof from the creator of the music that he uses for his theme songs for his channel, and there's this third-party company that's now putting a copyright claim on it, and he's got tens of thousands of videos, and he just has thousands and thousands of videos, so he can't keep up with every one of them, and they're demonetized because of crap that this company's doing, and apparently YouTube won't do nothing about it because YouTube doesn't care. They're still getting their money because they get their money whether we get anything or not, because you get to see the ads. I see ads on my channel all the damn time, and I got nothing to say with it. It is what it is, right? Good luck to you, boys. That's all I know about that. And so, like I said, so we look at, okay, so Battlecore. A lot of material was put on Battlecore, and in part worked hand in tandem with some of these. I haven't seen any other source books that have caveats that I've read so far. This is part of the story. Get the rest of it on Battlecore. Well, thank God they didn't do that, because then a lot of these books would be incomplete. And this one here, it's incomplete. There's another thing about this particular type and style that they chose to go with this. And once again, I've read a lot of other Fanpro material, and apparently this is not the way they continued with, because this here looks like a hot mess too. There's nothing wrong with it. I mean, you have to struggle through it a little bit though. What it looks like to me is they took a whole bunch of sources of materials and just slapped them together in one location so you can go through it. And there's no there's a rhyme to it, and there's a reason to it. But there's also a reason why it took them so damn long and so much man hours to produce, right? It's because they're trying to weave 1,000 damn little threads together to make a readable, a suitable tapestry that will hold the test of time. And I don't know if they succeeded or not. I'm only about a third of the way through the book. A lot of good information there. A lot of it's, you know, it's helped me understand the early days of the Jihad and what went down. There's so many things left that are missing, and I pick them up here and there. But it's like everything else. We have to get it in what areas we can and what we can do. And if you think creating new content from scratch is seamless and polished, you ain't got no clue, bro. You ain't got no clue, right? This is my what if. My what if. Potentially what if. So what if the clans didn't invade, right? So page 1, page 2, page 3, page 4, on to my page 5 of stuff, right? And while they're only in paragraphs, each paragraph is important because they fit apart. And I have to just, I'm trying to, in my mind, it's easy to sit there and go and put, here's the concept. Go! I hate that. I hate that when somebody goes and says, well, here's what we want to do. We want to do this now. Go. Tell me. You tell me. No, fool. That's not how that stuff works. So when I say, hey, what if, and I want to propose a what if, well, I got to walk through that what if as far as I can. In the same venue, I'm trying to be conducive to this existing system and storyline. Because you could literally go off on some wild tangent that was so completely radically different from what actually the clan invasion was. Well, then it's totally fantasy and fiction at that point. But the truth is, it should be that alternate reality, which means a lot of the things that took place in the existing reality has a mirror copy or a shadow within the alternate. So it isn't a diversion from. It's a parallel, but the situation isn't the same. So what if we didn't? Well, what could a FASA have done if they didn't introduce the clans? Or they introduced the clans many decades later. But what would have been who had been the obvious bad guys? I got my idea, and that's the one I went with. And it's not to say that they're the only one, but to replace the clans, you can't just say, oh, well, the Capellans are the bad guys. Well, no offense, the Capellans are the bad guys in everybody's damn story, except for the stories that are revolving around the Capellans. But you can't read an entire alternate history on just the Capellans rising up and dominating the inner sphere because, hey, they don't have the resources. They don't have the manpower. It ain't going to happen. In any fantasy setting, it ain't going to happen unless the other other four houses up and croak on them. I mean, it just isn't going to happen. They just don't have that kind of stuff. So, and then of course, what's going on in those stories? How does these work together? Who's being violated? Who's being the heroes? And going on and going on. And then I'm also struggling with, I don't want to bog down and get into one thing and spend 3 pages on one thing, because I'm wanting to do an overview. I want to do an overview of what if, not this, hey, well, what if this, oh, but let's all go off onto this one tangent and then come back and then they did that. No. And then, of course, I've already, this is about the first year, the beginning of it, through the first year, and things are starting to fall apart in some places and picking up speed in other places, and then there's still other events that take place in that second year of the clan invasion, and there's where I'm stumbling and struggling on. And then, of course, it's a time thing. I work on this when I get a chance. I work on it at work sometimes, but there are times where I work, and you hear me cry about it all the time, but it's the truth. I work god-awful hours, and sometimes they change. I mean, with it, we knew this bad weather was coming in, so yesterday I put 15 hours in. I was dog-tired all day. I wanted to work on this and put some more stuff on it, and I meant to, and I went and did 7 different jobs, and one of them involved 4 hours of driving back and forth. Well, I can't write while I'm driving at night. Can't write during the day either, to be honest, while I'm driving. So I got to be at a job site while the truck's doing something. Most of my jobs were smaller jobs, which does is get in, do it, and go to the next job. So when I got to the couple that I had, well, geez, I was beat and had other things that I was trying to do at the same time too. And so it's just a time thing. And so I work on it and work on it. And truth is, I really thought about, just firing off what I got and wrapping up with one of these things and just doing the conclusion. And then one of y'all just made a comment here earlier this morning on a unrelated channel or video. It says, it's okay if you take time. So, I'm probably going to listen to him and work on it a little bit further because I'm not totally satisfied with it. But I don't like making an assertion that I'm going to do something and then it doesn't work out. Right? Because it's just, I wanted it right. Sometimes it takes time to do things right, and that's something that Mr. Bills has hammered home in the forward on this book. It's just how much effort and time it took, and there's and why everything seemed to went on a weird pause. And this is the era where I got dissatisfied with what was going on. I understood. Yes, Frankie, I know. She wants in the room pretty bad, and I'm still worried about her camping out behind my chair like she did a couple months ago, and it cost me $300 when I ran over her toe or whatever I did. It just scares me a little bit. Anyway, so when things paused and FASA went and closed their doors suddenly, and yet we were still seeing FASA products coming out up to almost a year later, I was confused because I'd starting to hear rumors that FASA had closed, yet there's stuff coming out still. They're still introducing novels and source books. I'm like, what? And then suddenly out of nowhere come this click and this Wizkids crap, and I'm like, how do we go from the end of the FedCom war to what is this? And then suddenly the novels, the FAST novels stopped, and these Dark Age novels started coming out, and I'm like, okay, let's read these. Where the hell is this? What Intersphere is this? What setting is this? There's nothing here. See, the Dark Age novels started coming out, but what you didn't see was source books and other game book material for the Dark Ages specifically. We didn't see the source books for what the houses were doing during the Dark Age. We didn't see any of that material from Wizkids. If it exists, I've yet to see it. Maybe it does, and I just haven't seen it. I'll grant you, in 20 years, 15 years, there's a huge amount of stuff that came down the pike that I didn't get. I didn't pick up, I didn't buy it, I didn't see it. And I'm paying for that now. I'm still trying to play catch up. And if you think I've reviewed all my FASA stuff, no. I haven't got to any of the field guides yet from the FASA era, and there's still probably 5 or 6 smaller books sitting over here that I haven't got to because there's such a wide range and wealth of material to deal with, and I'm doing that stuff in this current, as you can tell. I mean, I have a safe video for my, the Free World League's intelligence service safe coming out, and I fully intend to visit all the major players when it comes to the intelligence book. And this is breaking down this book and then having my take on some of it too, and that takes time. And it's just like the minor wars. Y'all have seen my Anton video, Anton's revolt, Anton's rebellion, and just how impactful that was for the Fed, or for the end of the 3025 era and into the for the Fourth Succession War. Just how much that small internal issue within one house infects the greater range of things. And there's still two more Bush wars that's in that one book that I'll cover at some point down the road because they're worth covering, and they play their roles too. And ironically, isn't 2 of the 3? Yes, Banky, good gravy. That's her crying at the door, and then all right, hang on. You just something else. Yeah. Yeah. Come on. Get in here. Stay out from under the chair. Oh, I see. So Mama went outside and you got upset because you're in there by yourself? Huh? Yeah? What? Yeah? All right, come here. There you go. So, like I said, and stay off the keyboard. There you go. Get up in the window. So, we've got all this stuff changing over, and so Wizkids comes along, and they don't do a great job of, the novels come out, and most of the beginning novels made no sense whatsoever, and they didn't get any better. I read the first 5 or 6. I think I got the first 7, and then I stopped buying them. I mean, those are, they're $10 a piece at that point, and they made no sense to me, and there was no other source material coming out at that time for those novels that supported them. And the 1 or 2 things I got that were early releases of Fanpro had absolutely nothing to do with it. And so Fanpro's talking Jihad stuff on this end, and Wizkids is going on about the Dark Ages. And in my mind, it's the same thing. Is it not the same thing? Is there a difference between it? I mean, it's really confusing, and I don't have time for that. I mean, I really felt, I don't know, abused a bit by the companies, and it's not any of their particular single problems' faults. They did the best they could with what they got, but it sure left me in a conundrum. But there's plenty of players and people out there that continue following and y'all understood this stuff better than I do, obviously. So I'm coming from a different perspective and trying to catch up on it. And so it's the same thing when it comes to timelines and creating stuff and doing things well. Like I said, there's so many of these, the Andrians, for example. My God, how much conflict, hate, discontent, and trouble has the House Humphrey down for the Free Worlds League, the Confederation, and everybody in between. Every generation or every other generation of that family has had a problem, and they all want to be independent. They all want to be away from the Free Worlds League, or they want to run the Free Worlds League. And then sometimes when they do gain their freedom, suddenly they find themselves beset by so many enemies and no allies that so they go back on their knees or their feet or on their hands and knees, crawling back to the Merrics and the rest of the free world, saying, "Help us, let us in, let us in. It's cold and nasty, and I'm hungry and scared." So, and then the current renditions of this is still going on in 3150 era, right? So how much of a hot mess would the free world, how much less of a mess would the Free Worlds League be if the Humphreys family had been assassinated several hundred years earlier and replaced by somebody conducive to the leagues or to the Merrics, and not from the lack of somebody trying to pull that scenario off. But I'm just saying, or what if they just cut them loose altogether and said, "You're on your own"? Well, then they'd likely be vassals of the Confederation. So the Merrics and the Free Worlders, like, now the Confederation's is enough of a problem as small as they are. The last thing we want to do is let them have another, quarter-sized chunk of the inner sphere so they can become even a bigger problem. So, but the fact is that all that minor little infighting, all those brush wars, play huge roles in the grander scheme of things. Go to House Steiner and look at the Tamar area, or look at Sky. The Sky rebellions never cease. They always conniving and trying to find some way to either separate and become Free Sky, the Free Sky movement, because we all need to be free, and we're going to take customers with us too. And then they cry when it gets taken from them, or that's denied them, because it's not going to happen. House Steiner won't be House Steiner if they let that happen. And the Hassocks and the Sandovals and the Federated Sons, it's not any different. If we look at the Capella Confederation, well, we've seen internal derision between the Liaos themselves. When we've seen Candace break off and take the St. Ives compact with her, and when Tychonoff was taken from the Confederation and suitably set up as a public client, but it's just every one of those internal things causes hate, discontent, and problems. They all connect, and they're all. There's hundreds of them. Literally, I'm not going to do videos on every one of them because, Jesus, that would be terrible. I mean, it's not impossible, but that would be more than I've got time to deal with, because I've always got more stuff that I want to do. All right, and this video's already run on way longer than I planned on, so I'm thinking we're going to go ahead and bring it to an end. I want to do another video for today. I've already got about 4 already for Battletech and 4 for my own game that are done. So I wasn't really intending to do any videos this weekend because of the holiday. But since the weather's kind of changed that, my wife's like, "Well, you're gonna do your videos. You didn't do any videos last weekend." So I'm like, anytime she's like, "Yeah, I'm gonna jump on it and get a chance to do some." And so hopefully, I'd like to still be able to put out one every other day. I don't have. I'm leery to put one out every day. Sometimes that happens. Sometimes we'll kick one of my lesser popular videos out sooner just to get them out there, basically, because it gives me an opportunity to play my own game and to work on it and get my excitement set up, reestablished for just a little bit, and to share, 15, 20 views compared to 100 views what I get for these Battletech videos. I'm just saying. Plus, I got the Schreier coming up, and yes. Well, don't rub that too much. That's holding the camera up and it'll fall off. Yes, it will. So anyway, this is Rick and this is Frankie. And until next time, you guys have a great holiday weekend. Going on, my friends. This is Rick, and hey, if you like the channel, please hit the subscribe button, hit the like button, tell your buddies, tell your friends, tell your coworkers, tell anybody else that's in the gaming industry.